Hello, I'm Colin Baker, known to my friends as Old Sixie, the sixth Doctor in that wonderful series Doctor Who. And I am proud to tell you are listening to me, and also Gallifrey Public Radio, the radio that brings you everything from Doctor Who to Rhino Wants a Wife, which is a book written by Lucy Baker, my daughter. It's a children's book. You can get it from fbspublishing.co.uk, and it's about a rhinoceros who is lonely and wants a wife, and it's illustrated by my other daughter's boyfriend, and it's a bargain. Buy it.
This is Gallifrey Public Radio, a weekly podcast dedicated to positive enjoyment of Doctor Who. We travel through classic and new episodes, explore the extended universe, and play a few games from time to time. We do discuss news, content that has been officially released, and the occasional interesting rumor, but we'll warn you before anything considered spoilers comes up.
Welcome to episode 513 of Gallifrey Public Radio, where the best way to deal with twice the villains is to double your protagonists. I'm Jay.
I'm Julie.
I'm Kier.
And I'm Haley. This week, it's another 1980s multi-Doctor story, which means weird characters and wild costume decisions in The Two Doctors.
Time Lords have said they maintain strict neutrality regarding other civilizations, but when scientists in a third zone think tank start making progress on time travel, the Doctor is dispatched to intervene. The second Doctor, that is.
A past scientist acquaintance of the Doctor, aided by a genetically enhanced androgum and a squad of Sontarans, sees the Doctor as the key to their success, and his capture ripples all the way up to Six and Perry.
Now, logically, that must place us in rural Spain, right? So, as the struggle to save the second Doctor devolves into companions running from cannibals and Chasini, the GMO, deciding to do similar DNA modifications to a Time Lord.
One huge dinner tab and a lot of knife point threats later, and the Doctors, Jamie, and Perry are left with little time to wrap up all these problems before the dessert course.
The machine is now primed. Yes.
Excellent! I shall now execute your comrade.
Wait! Now that's why you Sontarans have no allies. You can't be trusted.
We have no need of allies! Sontaran might is invincible!
So, where do we want to start with this one? There was kind of a lot to unpack.
It's a problematic story, but I don't know if it's necessarily problematic because of the script or because of some of the things in the way that it was executed. I don't know. I think we all, with each of our lists of things to kind of call into question, I don't know if our balance is more about things that we really appreciated or things that we kind of wondered, was that supposed to be as it was? So it's not necessarily positive, negative, but more of a enjoyed and don't know what to make of.
Did it work or did it not?
Right. So maybe let's roll it up that high. Did the story work?
I feel like, this was meant to be in a multi-Doctor story because that's what we've kind of set out to do. When you compare it to the two previous multi-Doctor stories we've had, this just really fell flat. It was great to see the second Doctor and Jamie back, but man, it really didn't live up to the stakes that they've done previously.
Troughton was given some good material to work with. anytime you give Patrick Troughton an opportunity to switch characters in the midst of a story, you get some fun stuff out of him. It's something that he's particularly talented at, and they've used that on this show on more than one occasion. So that's enjoyable. Seeing him riffing with Shockeye, certainly entertaining.
You also got some of his interactions with different characters while he was on the table. So him being able to really play it up and then calling himself out. So, oh, that didn't work. Okay, try the next thing.
It was a really nice juxtaposition to see an incarnation of the Doctor that was willing to say, okay, I floated that. That didn't land the way I wanted. Versus Six, who never, ever admits foibles.
Going out of his way to say, no, I'm always right. And I was just a little bit off course, but I'm still right.
One of the things that really kind of stood out to me was when you have both Jamie and Perry in the scene together, seeing how differently the two of them are treated is jarring, especially when it's coming from the same character. Like, not even like how the second Doctor treats Jamie versus how the sixth Doctor treats Perry. It's how the sixth Doctor treats Jamie versus how he treats Perry.
And that comes right off the script.
How he treats other people as well.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's indicative of Robert Holmes as your writer. This is, I believe, the last story that he penned for the show, and it's the changing of a guard to a certain degree. We always noted during earlier eras within the show that we really appreciated some of the progressiveness that came from Pip and Jane Baker and writers of that sort who really recognized more of a balance of gender strength and caste distribution as well, and then just that working its way into a balance and respect within the dialogue. And we thought we were seeing signs of it as we were going through this era, and then it takes this kind of a rollback because you're handing it to a writer who kind of knows what their strengths are. My strength is the science. My strength is the idea of keeping it snappy in a sci-fi vein. And in that respect, sure, I get exactly what was being attempted here. Okay, Androgum's got that, sure. Sontarans involved because they're single-minded, sure. But all throughout is this dialogue that we just keep kind of stumbling over, and other things that we kept stumbling over.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, to one of my points, was the wardrobe effective or over the top? Not enough?
There was not enough there.
There certainly wasn't enough.
Yeah. You could say some of it was lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that something that I know that there have been choices like that because of, I don't know, maybe the time frame and just trying to appeal to a certain sect of the audience, but do we feel it's appropriate? Have there been any discussions since then saying, hey, we're sorry that this is where we landed on that?
I don't know if there have been apologies. There have been explanations. There have been things attributed to it to say this was... It was a time when we were pushing boundaries and taking chances, and however you would like to, put a filter on that, but it doesn't change the fact that it was wholly unnecessary and ridiculous, sort of counterproductive to what you were trying to screen. You first see Perry there, and she's trying to sun herself next to a fishing hole, but she's still wearing platform shoes. And it's just, the whole thing is just odd.
It's kind of the way Perry's character has been treated for the run of the show. She's not developed in a way that shows that the writers respect her as a character. That's true.
Yeah, I think of some of the other encounters we've had with this kind of thing, and you've got Leela, who it's kind of explained that she's wearing the leathers and stuff like that because that's just her civilization. She's a huntress. She's it's meant to be that way. And we had the one instance with Nyssa when it kind of explained away like, oh, it's getting very hot, so she has to shed the rest of her clothes and that kind of. It's like at least there was some attempt made to be like, there's a reason why they're doing. And with this one, I really feel like it was just like, well, we got to draw people in somehow.
There were a few things like that were just sort of flatly gratuitous. It was unnecessary for it, and it's not just the wardrobe. It's camera placement. It's blocking. It's all the things that basically put things front and center in front of the camera for a solid chunk of time. And if you can look past that, if you can just say, all right, I'm fine. I'm going to listen to the episode or episodes more than I'm going to watch them from moment to moment for that reason. Or if it's something where another thing that we were talking about whether or not it may be unnecessary for inclusion, not from the sexualized nature, but from the violence and gore that we have seen that is starting to work its way into these mid-'80s stories a little bit more. So now we've got a stabbing happening on screen, and the death of a character who wasn't just the guard at the post. This is somebody who we were supposed to like. He was this funny little moth collector, and we see him particularly slowly, bleed to death in a restaurant.
I had to wonder if that was like a dream of his to die on screen as part of either the character being an actor or somebody who knew a guy who's like an actor, or if it was like this, literally the actor who goes to my buddy who's the writer and says, can I be the one to do that scene? Because I would love to die on screen. And then, however many donations later it happens. I don't know. Also, the Sontarans melting to death, or them carrying in a leg after the one had exploded. There's some pretty effective use of that kind of imagery, for sure.
Yeah, the choices are getting bolder and bolder and bolder. Whether or not they should, or whether or not there's any justification for it, they are trying these things, and they're not really shying away from it. It's been getting progressively more intense as these stories go on.
Julie, you just mentioned the Sontarans. Like, how do we feel about their inclusion? Like, were they strictly needed in this story, or was it just another layer that I feel like you had Chesini behind the scenes the whole time doing things, and the Sontarans really just kind of acted as puppets. And like, at the end of the day, were they necessary?
If you want to stretch this story to 3 parts, you need another fold in there to make that happen.
It does make a viable filler, but I also think that to a certain degree they have established pretty well the doggedness of the Sontaran Empire, and the fact that I think this had been referenced in at least one other, if not a couple of occasions prior, that should they ever, almost on par with the Daleks, if they were ever to acquire the ability to time travel, it would make them a nearly unstoppable force. Mm-hmm. So the Androgums, as what had previously been just the dumb muscle for this territory, this portion of developed space, they could have been dumb muscle. You could have seen Androgums go all the way from the shock eyes, and maybe even ones that were even less developed than shock eye, all the way up through their experimentation up to what Chesini was. But I don't know if that would have carried the same weight or the same impetus for the Doctor to say, no, this is something we have to address. We have to tend to this and not let it progress a little bit further, because these are the Sontarans we're talking about. And if they take this on, if they add this to their repertoire, I don't know if this is something that I can handle. So something of that nature, I get it.
Well, also, this is supposed to be one of the big multi-Doctor stories, big anniversary special. You want to bring back one of your established villains.
It wasn't an anniversary special. This is 85.
Well, still, just the multi-Doctor story nature. Like, you want to bring back somebody we've fought before and give that weight to this story instead of just having the new villains.
I agree, and I think that it also establishes a nice story triangle, So you've got everyone playing against each other, and it allows for some of the dialogue to not just be one-sided or lecture-y in between the pairs that are working together, because it makes sense that they sneak off into an area and then talk about the other ones behind their backs, or they're running off in a different direction and giving an instruction that somebody hears it, and then that gets relayed, and then it's a little bit of a game of telephone. Those kinds of things don't happen if it's this group versus this group, but being able to play with some of that back and forth, the plane crashing, quote plane, and some of that kind of going in the different exits and following each other around the town, that kind of stuff is fun to play with when you have those multiple groups. So, which kind of brings me to the question of Spain? Is this just because they have good restaurants in every other doorway, or countryside that worked well, the bell chiming? I don't know. Was there a reason for this, or just...
It was a last-minute location change. They were expecting, this was originally penned to happen in Nolans, and there was no budget to film in the States. So it ended up, and then they floated, I think they were thinking about Venice at one point. Again, places where you had, decent kind of cultural gathering and that sort of thing. But yeah, the proximity of restaurants, because Holmes knew from the beginning that he wanted this. He was a vegetarian and wanted to make an allegorical statement about carnivores. So that's how this kind of devolved into what it was. But no, the budget wasn't there for it.
The old meat eaters.
Exactly. It's, yeah. So the cannibalism thing that just kind of comes in hard. But yeah, I think the proximity to restaurants was there in the script, but I don't think it was intended to be Spanish restaurants. Although it worked out fine. I mean, paella. Who doesn't love paella?
They ate a lot of random stuff. What was it? 1,000-pound meal plus wine plus something else?
It's like 18,000. It was like
18,000. It was
number.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was so hungry when I was watching this, and still am.
It was a mere snack.
Yeah, I kind of went off the other direction because we starts talking about some of the recipes, sure, but then every time he would say flesh, I was like, ugh, ugh.
Well, that kind of brings me to one of my points. Like, it's not technically cannibalism because they're not technically human, but close enough to cannibalism to really creep out the kids, right?
Yeah, creep out the kids, and I think if Holmes had his way, kind of turn off the audience. He was trying to make the audience uncomfortable with the idea of eating flesh. That's why you had like rats being consumed on screen and chickens being consumed on screen. It's really, really painting it.
We almost cut up every single one of the cast, I'm pretty sure, for who's preparing them, and then momentarily got pulled away.
Curses again.
Right. You have to wonder how many times Fraser's been asked about getting beat up for that scene to tenderize.
Is Fraser really marbled below the thigh?
Right.
I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you.
I know. Yeah. Something maybe not. Again, how many times has he been asked? But it does make me wonder, from the Androgum perspective, are they all that way, or in the craving of other planets' sustenance and the cooking and the need to travel for that and trying to become more than they are? Or do some of them have food and different things that they cook on their surface? Have they eaten each other and that's why they're forced to leave their planets? I don't know if we got a lot about them.
They haven't been utilized much beyond the story, a couple of books and things, but they have always been described as these rather base creatures that are driven by insatiable appetite. Full stop. If they had the means, had the intelligence to be able to get off their own planet, I'm sure they would have gone ahead and gone that route and started devouring the ecosystems of anything else they could get themselves to. But they hadn't, as of yet, been able to. So this was their chance to move on. That's why there's that whole thing about like the lineages of the Androgams, and Cassini was the representative of one. You don't forget your roots and that sort of thing, because they were going to carry that legacy to the stars, kind of thing.
And it was weird that there was the call out for, oh, can you read that book? And they're smart enough to read other languages that they've never seen before.
Right. Well, I mean, we only have these 2 examples of the Androgams, so we don't get to see some of the ones. I think to Jay's point about whether the Sontarans were really necessary, in that if you wanted to go the route of slapping red eyebrows on a half a dozen extras and getting a cast of Androgams that run the gamut from the really sort of animalistic Cro-Magnon types all the way up to Cassini the Exalted, then yeah, you might have been able to understand a little more how they had been altered and given a little bit smarter than the average bear intelligence.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the last thing I really want to discuss is like the biggest part of the story. It's the 2 doctors. So there are 2 doctors in this story, but they barely interact. We're halfway through the 3rd part before they're even on screen together. Was that satisfying as a multi-doctor story?
For me, I felt like it was 2 arcs that eventually caught up to each other. They tried to set it up in a way that one was following the other, and so I didn't feel like it was wrong. It was a lot of care for the previous, like Six caring, trying to make sure that his storyline gets held up and that he doesn't go anywhere, but very selfish in that way. And then when they were working together, it didn't feel like they cared or were natural towards each other. So that I did feel like that fell a little flat.
Yeah, I agree. The whole point of having a multi-doctor story is to watch them interact and see how the characters feel about each other. And we got so little of it in this one, and they spent the entire time bickering and just being horrible to each other that it wasn't enjoyable at all.
That was kind of my take on it as well, Jay, is that as much as the novelty of seeing these 2 sharing screen time was a nice thing to say, all right, it's been done, and I'm appreciative to see these 2 eras kind of dovetail. You're choosing 2 iterations of the Doctor that are such a disparity in personality and behavior and manner and treatment of those around them that they can't actually work cohesively together. I don't think you would be doing one or the other a disservice to their persona in order to either harden 2 to kind of, to check 6 when he's getting uppity or something like that, or to call him out on his some of his bombasticness or his pompousness. And by the same token, if you were to soften 6, that's not true to what we know of him as well. That kind of has to be something that spreads out over time. Perry takes a long time to kind of tease out a compliment here and there. They're very, very far and few between. So it's oil and water from the start within the same character, which is fascinating with the show that you can say something like that. But yeah, nonetheless, it doesn't make for a smooth bit of scene work. And I'm wondering if that may be, to Haley's point about them not really, really sharing a lot of dialogue until well into the 3rd installment, that may be the case, because it's more interesting to sort of see them in their pockets being them, and then the toggle back and forth is what makes it, wow, they really are the same person but dramatically different. And you just get to appreciate that.
I accept. Overall, how do we feel this story rates on our level of rewatch and or recommend?
I mean, you almost have to recommend it because it's a multi-doctor story. But I feel like that's kind of the only criteria that makes it an episode that you would want to recommend to somebody, because there's better stories out there for 2, there's better stories out there for 6, there's better stories out there for Sontarans. So not high on recommendability or rewatchability, I would say, which is unfortunate.
I'm gonna say I don't find it particularly recommendable. Like there's not a lot of like, oh, you've got to see it because it introduces this aspect or it does this thing. If they want to watch a multi-doctor story, there's plenty of better ones out there. There's not really anything in this one that I feel like you can't go on without seeing. And as far as rewatchability, it's for the same thing. Like, I don't see myself going back to watch this one, and the gold standard of would I keep it on in the background while I'm folding laundry? Probably not. I'd probably skip it to something that I actually enjoy more.
I think to that point, that is where I find this one may have a repeat value. So I wouldn't call it rewatchable so much as I would call it re-listenable, because some of the dialogue is kind of clever. Some of the lines individually are kind of clever. Some of the scientific premise within it, as Holmes has often done, is interesting to kind of take in and say, oh, they're still tinkering with those sort of concepts today in modern penned sci-fi. But as soon as you start looking at it for too long, you start thinking, okay, well, all right, yep, this is that story. Okay, I'm gonna go back to looking down at my notes or what have you. So that's where I would still say it has a little bit of merit in the rewatch column. Recommendable. I absolutely agree with your points about the fact that there are better multi-doctor stories out there, but your completionists are going to want to add that to the list for sure. It is potentially recommendable insofar as seeing that Troughton still has chops as of 1985.
So kind of what I'm hearing is that we would like them to tighten up the dialogue, put it into audio, and try again.
I think that'd be a fair edit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
as they say in the real estate business, it's got good bones. Succulent bones where the meat falls off like ripened fruit. Not those kind of bones.
Yeah, I'd take that. So I don't disagree with anything you all said. I don't need to spend a bunch of time saying it again.
Well, we would be happier to start with another news item, but as we are recording today, this marks the day that we have received the news that Michael Jason has passed. Our Valyard, after a battle with a brief illness, statement was released by the family and the state, indicating that he has left us, and they would respect and appreciate some privacy at this time. So it's for those of you who had the opportunity to be able to see him at recent conventions within the last 5 or 6 years, both in the UK and the US, consider yourselves fortunate, and to the stars.
So the next news item is a little happier. For both fans of Doctor Who and fans of the Great British Bake Off, Jodie Whittaker is going to be appearing in a celebrity special edition of the show. And they're going to bring together 20 famous, at least in the UK or among people who watch UK television, faces across 5 episodes.
We were commenting before we started recording that that number 20 should scare you. Not only because we thought there were only 12 British actors, so that's odd, but the fact that I don't think we've ever seen more than 12 people in the tent.
I again don't believe that they'll be putting 20 people at once into a tent. It will for sure be broken up into some number of smaller groupings.
Yeah, well, I'm also thinking...
I just don't know.
I'm thinking of the scheduling of some of these people, like... They may not be available for huge chunks of time. So what you said, I think, makes sense.
They get to tag out.
For sure. No, not even tag out. Just you book for one weekend, and you go and because that's how they do it, is you bake Saturday and Sunday, and then that way they can do all 3 challenges, and either you get, hey, one and done, thank you so much for coming. Or if they're going to try to extend it a little bit, you get 4 groups of 5. That's 20, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
which
then
would make sense. That's
you
your
get
first 4 episodes, and then you've got like the finals. That's the winner from
a
each round.
final.
It should be interesting. I don't know how long it'll be before we stateside get to see that, because this is all being done as part of this fundraising element for Stand Up to Cancer. So I don't know if that's going to change what would normally be the distribution speed with which it comes to Netflix here in the States. I don't know if that
We
would
got
delay
it
at all.
airing at the same time this past season, if I recall. So cross your fingers that it is simulcast and we get it at the same time and we don't have to wait and avoid spoilers.
The last bit of news that we've got today, RTD actually kind of gave us a state of the series for 2024 and 2025 episodes in the 600th issue of the Doctor Who magazine.
They're only a little bit of out in front of us.
Right?
They're a little more consistent. A lot better editing. But yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting. Did everybody kind of get a chance to parse through this and see? It doesn't spoil anything, so you don't have to worry about it. It just says, this episode is about this % done, and it's still waiting on, whatever. It's waiting on a score. It's waiting on effects and so forth. Did you look through it?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny watching as like RTD is like, oh, this is this % done and this is this % done. And then like put in parentheses, like, I'm making all of these numbers up. I have no idea how math actually works kind of thing. Like,
I love his self-deprecating humor. The guy has so much going for him right now and has one of the most brilliant minds in television right now. And he's like, I'm just spinning levers. I have no idea what's going on behind me. It's great.
it is kind of interesting seeing how much like he's bouncing around some, where there are episodes of season 1 that aren't completed yet, and he's got episodes in season 2 that are completely finished, and like I think they've already filmed them and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they're going back to just do pickup scenes and things. For those of you whose ears just picked up, Jay did, yes, admit to these things being season 1 and season 2.
Yep. Hey, it's what they're being labeled as. It's what everyone's calling them. Just, I'm not going to sit here and stick my head in the sand and be like, no, you can't change it again. Just, I'm going with it.
So then what we just watched was series 0, -1.
No.
Don't try and it's like Doctor Who canon. Don't try and figure it out. Just go with it.
Yeah. The specials sit in limbo anyway. They're all series 0.
Mm-hmm.
They're all series 0.
It's like comic book numbering, kind of. Like, after the number gets high enough, you start over again at 1. But sometimes there's like a special in between that's like a limited.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, they'll decide that they want to know what the true number is. So they'll revert to the original numbering.
Yeah. But I think it's potentially up to either what they had written, what they could shoot, who was available, different things like that for the percentages across the board. And then I'm sure even the ones that look incomplete, he knows what he'll write. It's just a matter of actually putting that pen to paper or fingers to keyboards to make it happen. So
right.
it is good to see that we have at least 2 series worth of actual content coming within this year and next year. So it's not even, it's not that far away.
And it all comes down to, I like the fact that he very plainly puts the explanation in here for those of you. I'm sharing this as a curiosity for all of you in case you wanted to know, but in case this is something that you've ever groused about, and I think it actually solidifies something that Jay, you were mentioning in a previous recording of ours, that the entire industry is driven by the duration you have to carve out for effects these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the way that it is. You can have all the stories in the world and they will just get, a log jam at the door until you have a crew that's there to sit there and do the kind of effects that warrant the budget that you're trying to maintain and the timetable that you're trying to cram it into. So that's your bottleneck right there.
Let's go back to the bubble wrap.
I always thought it would be kind of fun just for once to take a really a banger of a modern episode and retrofit it. Go back and do it with cardboard and craft paint and a
There
trip
are
to Home Depot.
YouTubers who have done that for you. You don't have to look
do it with
too
the full
far.
cast. Do it with the cast.
You know how much that costs to get them to
Tennant
do
and
it?
Tate would do it.
They would, absolutely.
You give us one more pandemic where everybody's in lockdown.
No, for the love
Not
of
that I'm
God,
inviting
no.
it. Not that I'm
Please,
inviting
don't
it. I'm
even,
just saying
don't
you
even
could.
joke.
All right, I'm not joking. I'm very, very serious about this.
Next time when we come back, we're actually going to be talking about all the things that came up during Gallifrey 1.
Came up, past tense. Because we can do that now.
We'll have come up.
We'll have coming up. Yeah, I was never really good at verbs.
This has been episode 513 of Gallifrey Public Radio. Until next time, this is Jay saying, I'm tenderizing the meat. It's what you do.
And this is Kier saying, yes, I think I could venture to say that most of our customers are certainly human.
This is Julie saying, oh my Gideont. Oh, crumbs.
And this is Haley saying, I'm so glad Justari got a second job hosting the Hunger Games.
We'll see you next time.
Allons-y.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Gallifrey Public Radio. Want to keep the conversation going? You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or just send us a good old-fashioned email to feedback@gallifreypublicradio.com. You can also give us a phone call at 754-225-5477. That's 754-CALL-GPR, and you may hear your voice on a future episode of the show. Everything's got to end sometime, otherwise nothing would ever get started. Join us next week for a brand new episode.
Hi, this is Jacob. This recording of Gallifrey Public Radio is copyrighted in 2024. GPR is a fan-owned, fan-produced podcast. We'll see you next time!